Mandy sat on a red mold bench in front of her hut, with her two hands carrying her cheek. She lowered her gaze at her protruding stomach and tears blurred her eyes. Every woman who was in that condition was supposed to be happy, but not Mandy. A pregnant married woman was supposed to be joyful, but her own life had turned sorrowful. She had tried everything possible to avoid pregnancy. Her husband James knew about her story and he supported her decision. James loves his wife Mandy so much. When James wanted to marry Mandy, many people from the village went to him and told him not to marry her. They all told him what was happening in Mandy's clans, but James persisted that he would marry Mandy. His parents, after hearing it, tried to dissuade him, but James grew deaf ears towards them. So after their marriage, they tried everything possible to avoid pregnancy. But then what was marriage without pregnancy? Soon after the marriage, people started gossiping. Some said that Mandy was a witch, while some said that she didn't have a womb. Another set of people said that she was the devil. James' mother had nothing to write home about. She tagged Mandy so many names. She said that Mandy had lost her womb, that she was a man. James' mother made sure that Mandy never went to any women's meeting. Mandy would always be afar admiring their uniforms' attires. But one day, she made up her mind to join them. As she was stepping into the premises where the meeting was taking place, some groups of women stopped. "Don't you know that this is a women's meeting? This meeting is for women, not for men like you," one said, and they laughed. "Help me tell this fruitless tree that this meeting is not for her type," another said, and they began to laugh and mock her. Mandy ran to her home and wept bitterly. She wished that those women could carry half of her burden. She wished they knew what she was passing through. James told her not to allow their words to take a toll on her. He reminded her that what mattered was their love for each other. James and Mandy heard about many other gossips and rumors, but they didn't affect their marriage. They knew what they wanted. But one day something unimaginable happened. Mandy woke up one early morning and found herself vomiting uncontrollably. At first they thought it was malaria. James went inside the forest and fetched some roots and leaves. After cooking it, Mandy began to drink it every morning and night. As she was drinking the medicine, she noticed something strange. She noticed that many things had started to irritate her, that she no longer likes the food she liked before, that she was always feeling weak and dizzy most of the time. Again, that she had lost her appetite for food. Upon all this revelation, Mandy and James still believed that it was malaria. Mandy continued to drink malaria medicine until her stomach began to swell up. It was only then that Mandy and James noticed what had happened, that Mandy was pregnant. The same pregnancy that they had been avoiding since 5 years of their marriage. James tried all he could to console his wife. He loved his wife so much that he wouldn't want anything to happen to her. He blamed everything as the cause of the pregnancy except Mandy. Right now he sat under the kola nuts tree in their compound watching his tears stream down Mandy's eyes. That had always been the situation since the discovery of the pregnancy. How could he lift off the burden of his wife? It had been happening since ages, and no one had found the solution. All the women from Mandy's clan always died 2 days after having their first baby. The moment they entered their month of birth, sickness would begin to creep in small, and it was that mysterious sickness that would kill the person. Mandy had lost 5 of her elder sisters in that same way. She had also lost some of her friends and cousins. And each time she looked at her big stomach, it was a kind of a reminder that her own time was near, because she knew that she would die after having the baby. James went over to his wife and placed his hand on her shoulder. He wished he had the power to stop whatever that was bothering his wife. As usual, he consoled her with nice words and also assured her that nothing would happen to her. His nice words didn't help Mandy in any way. She knew that she would eventually leave her baby behind after giving birth, just like her sisters and friends. That night, James couldn't sleep at all. All he wanted was to find a solution to his wife's problem, to save his lovely wife. So the next morning, James set out on a journey of discovery. He wanted to find out what was the cause and the solution. His dead father used to tell him about chief priests, who had answers to every problem. He took his bag, astride it by his shoulder, and went in search of this particular chief priest. He walked and walked and walked. At some point he got tired and decided to rest a little before continuing his journey. He sat on a sprouted root of a tree, placed his head on the trunk, and slept off. And then he had a dream. In his dream, he saw an old man. The old man told him that he was about to find a solution to his wife's problem. "Follow this path," the old man said, pointing at the path. When James woke up from his sleep, he remembered everything that happened very well. It was as if it had happened in real life. Without hesitation, he took the path that the old man had pointed at. He walked and walked and walked, and at some point, he began to think that the old man had come to him to make his journey longer. As he was battling with this thought, he noticed some people coming towards his side. But these people weren't like people he had met before. They were all short like 3-year-old children, but looking at them one would know that they weren't. It was then that James noticed that he had entered into the land his father used to tell him before. All the people passed him as if they were not seeing anyone. James studied the environment before stopping one of them. He asked him where he could find their chief priests. The man he asked didn't say anything. Instead, he pointed in a direction. James followed the directions, and after a few minutes' walk, he found himself at the chief priest's hut. When he entered into the hut, the chief priest was reciting some incantations. James waited patiently for the man to finish whatever he was doing. He was surprised when he saw that the chief priest was the same man he had seen in his dream. He shared everything with the chief priest. The way all the women from his wife's clan always died after having their first child. He also told him that the same death was hovering around his homestead because soon his wife would be having their first baby. The chief priests, after listening to him, asked him to go back home and bring his wife with him. Mandy was sitting under the cola nuts tree when her husband returned. She welcomed her husband very well, served him food and water. After eating the food, James made a loud belch and they both laughed out loud. James was happy that his lovely wife was laughing. He ran his finger on her stomach and began to tell her about his journey and what the chief priest had said. The only thing Mandy wanted was a solution. Mandy went inside and packed some of her belongings, and both of them set out again. The journey was longer this time because of Mandy's condition. Her sickness had started to creep in combined with her pregnancy. Several times, they stopped and rested under the trees. James was a supportive husband. He supported her throughout the journey. At some point, he even wanted to carry Mandy on his back, but Mandy declined. The journey was an exhausting one. It took all Mandy's strength away. Finally, when they reached the chief priest's house, the chief priest took them at the back of his house where a small shrine was located. He told Mandy to lay on the ground beside his small shrine, and Mandy did. James watched as the man blew some substance into the air, and Mandy slept off. Mandy drifted off to sleep, and soon she found herself in a distant land. In that place, she was on her way somewhere she couldn't place her fingers at. Then she heard people wailing. Many people were passing by while others were entering the house where the crying was coming from. Then Mandy heard people talking about what happened. The oldest man in that clan had died. He died well, and he will be buried well, one of the passers-by said. She didn't give that statement much thought. Soon, Mandy saw some men digging a grave. And after that, the old man's remains were put inside the grave. Mandy saw some of the elders whispering among each other, arguing over something that seemed very important. The moment Mandy turned her face, she saw 2 beautiful girls approaching carrying a basket of fruits. Perhaps they went to the market, Mandy reasoned. But then she saw one of the young men who had dug the grave, went over to the 2 girls and dragged one of them out. The girl cried and screamed, but no one showed concern. Instead of being worried, some of them were smiling. Mandy felt a pang of pain on her chest. Mandy was only staring at them. The girl was pushed inside the grave, and she fell beside the old man's remains. The girl cried and pleaded, but no one listened to her. She told them to have pity on her unborn child, that she was pregnant. Instead of her words to save her, it added more fuel to the fire. Whispers floated amidst the air. Some people said that she couldn't be pregnant. She wasn't married. How could she be pregnant? They called her names, said that she was supposed to be happy that she was dying with the man. So they began to throw sand into the grave. It was then that the girl raised her head and said, "Because you people do not want me to see my child, none of your female generations, both born or unborn, shall see their child." They will be sick before having their baby, and they shall die 2 days after having the baby." She cursed, but as she was saying it, one of the men got angry and struck her with a log, and she collapsed into the grave. Mandy cried out, and when she woke up, she saw herself crying in real life. She narrated everything that happened to her husband and the chief priests. The chief priests told them that the only solution was to look for the lady's grave and ask for forgiveness. Only the lady had a cure to her problem. James and Mandy thanked the chief priest profusely and took their leave. They went to Mandy's clan and met the oldest man in their clan. They told the man what they had found out concerning what had been happening. The man was happy that the solution had been found. For years their daughters had been suffering for what they didn't know. He took them to the place where the lady was buried. Mandy recognized the place the moment she saw it. She knelt on the grave and began to plead for mercy. As she was pleading and begging, tears began to stream down from her cheeks. Then a fierce breeze came and everything around the place began to shake. Mandy clutched on the ground tightly with her fist, crying. The moment the breeze came to a stop, the lady appeared and smiled at Mandy. "The sins of your forefathers have been forgiven. I have heard your cry," the lady said. Mandy raised her head to thank her, but she had already disappeared. James went over to his wife and hugged her tight. As he tried to lift her up, Mandy screamed in a high tone. She had fallen into labor immediately. James ran around and cut some leaves and placed it on the ground for her to lay on. After a little while, the baby emerged. It was a baby girl, and she looked exactly like the lady who was buried alive. James lifted her up to the sky and brought her down. Then he said to her, "You have come this time around to stay. You will live long, my dear child. No one will cut your life short." James and Mandy named their daughter Victory, and as Victory grows, she reminded them of all the things they had gone through during her pregnancy, and how she brought victory and an end to their suffering. Because after her birth, no one from that clan had ever died after giving birth. Lesson from the story: may we never pay for the sins of our forefathers. Amen. Hello champions, I hope you enjoyed the stories. Please hit the like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks.